English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now. Hey, English learners. Welcome back to your podcast, the English Daily Podcast.
Yes, we're so happy to have you here today.
Today's episode is all about how to use would, could, and should in professional English emails.
That's right, and we're going to make it really practical for you.
So whether you're a beginner or already speaking well, you'll find something useful here.
Let's dive right in.
Jack, let's start with the basics. Can you explain what makes would, could, and should so special in professional emails?
That's a great question, Anna. You know, these three modal verbs are absolutely essential for professional communication because they help you sound polite, respectful, and professional.
That's really important, isn't it? I mean, nobody wants to sound rude or aggressive in their work emails.
Exactly, and that's why these modals are your best friends. Let me break it down simply. Would is used to make requests more polite or to talk about hypothetical situations.
Can you give us an example of that?
Sure, instead of saying, "Give me the report," you would say, "Would you mind sending me the report?" See how much nicer that sounds?
Oh, I see. It's so much more professional. What about could?
Could is similar, but it's often used to ask for permission or to suggest something is possible, like, "Could we schedule a meeting?" or "Could you please review this document?"
And should. That one seems a bit different.
You're right. Should is used for giving advice or recommendations, like, "You should review the guidelines before submitting," or "We should consider this option."
So in short, would and could are for requests, and should is for advice. Is that correct?
That's the basic distinction, yes. But there's so much more nuance to explore, and that's what we'll cover today.
I'm excited to learn more. What about the difference between using these modals versus just being direct?
You know, that's a really good point. Sometimes being too direct can come across as demanding or even rude. Let me tell you a story.
Oh, I love stories. Please share.
When I first started working, I used to write emails like, "Send me the file by tomorrow." And you know what happened?
What?
People sometimes ignored my emails or responded quite coldly. Then my manager sat me down and explained that I needed to soften my language.
Really? That must have been an eye-opener.
It definitely was. She showed me that saying, "Could you please send me the file by tomorrow?" got much better results. People were more willing to help and even more friendly in their responses.
That's such a valuable lesson. It's not just about the words you choose, but about building positive relationships.
Absolutely. And that's what makes these modals so powerful. They help you communicate effectively while maintaining good working relationships.
I think I also learned something similar when I was working in corporate. The way you phrase things really matters.
Oh, do you have a story too?
Of course. So I was working on a project with a colleague, and I needed her help with something urgent. At first, I wrote, "I need the data by 3 p.m.
And what happened?
She responded, "I'll try, but it might be difficult." She didn't seem very happy about it. So I learned to rewrite my email.
What did you write instead?
I wrote, "Would it be possible to get the data by 3 p.m.? I understand if it's challenging, but it would really help with the client presentation." And she responded right away with, "Of course, I'll make it work."
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yes, and that's the power of these modal verbs. They show respect for the other person's time and workload.
That's exactly what we want our listeners to understand. It's not about being weak or indecisive. It's about being professional and effective.
Absolutely. Now, let's get into more specific situations. Let's talk about making polite requests. What's the difference between using would and could?
Great question. Both can be used for requests, but there are subtle differences. Would is generally considered more formal and polite, while could is slightly less formal but still very professional.
I see. They seem quite similar. Is there a situation where one is better than the other?
You know, it often depends on context and your relationship with the person. For very formal situations or with senior executives, would is usually safer, but honestly, both are perfectly acceptable in most professional settings.
What about would like versus could I ask? Are those different?
Good observation. Would like is used to express what you want or need, often more politely than I want. For example, I would like to schedule a meeting sounds much better than I want to schedule a meeting.
And could I ask?
That's a way of asking permission before you make a request. Like, could I ask you to clarify that point? It's a softer way to introduce what you're going to ask.
These are really useful patterns. Let's talk about some common mistakes learners make.
One common mistake is forgetting to use these modals when making requests. For example, saying, send me the email, instead of, could you send me the email? The direct version can sound quite demanding.
That's a good point. I remember when I was learning English, I used to be too direct sometimes.
We all make those mistakes at first. The important thing is to learn and improve.
Another mistake might be overusing them, right? Like making everything sound too formal?
Exactly. There's a balance. Using these modals appropriately makes you sound professional, but overusing them can make your emails sound stiff or even sarcastic in some cases.
Can you overdo it?
Oh, yes, definitely. For example, if you write, would you possibly be able to send me the report, would you mind? That sounds strange.
That does sound awkward.
The key is to use these modals naturally and appropriately. One or two in an email is perfect. More than that starts to sound excessive.
That's really helpful advice. Now let's talk about some more advanced patterns.
Sure, let's discuss conditional requests. These are really powerful for making polite requests sound even more polite.
Conditional requests? What do you mean?
Like, would you mind if I asked you to, or could we perhaps consider? These add an extra layer of politeness by acknowledging that you're aware you're asking for something.
Oh, I see. So it's like you're being extra considerate.
Exactly. You're showing that you understand you're making a request and that you appreciate their help.
These are wonderful tips. Our listeners will definitely benefit from this. Now, let's talk about should. It's a bit different from would and could, right?
Yes, absolutely. Should is used for giving advice, making recommendations, and expressing what you think is the right or best thing to do.
How is that different from giving suggestions?
Well, suggestions and advice are closely related. Should is typically used when you believe something is the right or recommended course of action. It's a bit stronger than just making a suggestion.
Can you give us some professional examples?
Of course, in professional emails, you might say, you should review the company guidelines before submitting your report, or we should consider hiring additional staff for this project.
I see. And these sound like recommendations or advice rather than requests.
Exactly right. That's the key distinction. With should, you're not necessarily asking for something. You're advising or recommending.
What about when we want to suggest something more tentatively?
Good question. For more tentative suggestions, you might use could instead, like we could also explore other options, or you could consider delegating some tasks.
So, should is stronger advice, while could is softer suggestion.
That's a great way to think about it. And there's also might for even softer suggestions. But let's focus on these three for now.
What about ought to? Is that similar to should?
Yes, ought to has a similar meaning to should, but it's less commonly used in modern professional emails. It's a bit more formal and old-fashioned, so I'd recommend sticking with should for most situations.
Good to know. Let's talk about some situations where we might use should in professional emails.
Sure. One common situation is when you're mentoring or training someone. You might say, you should check with your manager before proceeding, or you should keep copies of all correspondence.
Another situation is when you're providing feedback or recommendations.
Yes, exactly. Based on the analysis, we should prioritize the marketing campaign. Or you should consider implementing the new system next quarter.
What about giving advice to colleagues or peers?
That's a great question. With colleagues, you want to be careful not to sound condescending. So you might say, I think we should discuss this in our next team meeting. Or maybe we should get input from the finance team.
So it's about framing your advice appropriately depending on your relationship with the person.
Exactly. That's a really important skill to develop.
So should is stronger advice, while could is softer suggestion. Any common mistakes to avoid with should?
One common mistake is using should when you actually mean must or have to. Should implies recommendation, not obligation. So if something is required, you'd say you must submit the form by Friday, rather than you should submit the form by Friday.
That's an important distinction.
Yes, it is. Another mistake is using should too frequently in a way that sounds preachy or bossy. You want to maintain a collaborative tone.
Balance is key, as always. Let's talk about something really interesting now. How can we use these modals to soften direct statements?
Oh, this is such an important topic. In professional emails, sometimes you need to deliver difficult messages or give feedback, and you want to do it in a way that's respectful and constructive.
Can you give us some examples?
Of course, instead of saying, that's not correct, you could say, I don't think that's quite right, or perhaps we could reconsider that approach.
I see. So we're still conveying the same message, but in a more considerate way.
Exactly. Another example, instead of, you're wrong about this, you might say, I see it differently. Could we discuss your perspective?
That's much more constructive. What about when we need to say no to something?
That's a great question. Saying no is never easy, but these modals help. Instead of, I can't do that, you could say, I'm not sure I would be able to accommodate that request. Or, that might not be possible, but let me think about alternatives.
I see. What about disagreeing with ideas in meetings or emails?
Very common situation. You might say, I understand your point, but I would suggest a different approach. Or perhaps we could consider another perspective.
These patterns are so helpful. Let's talk about giving negative feedback.
Feedback is tricky. You want to be honest but constructive. Instead of, your work was below standard, you could say, I think there's room for improvement in this area, or we should discuss how to improve the next deliverable.
And how do you handle it when you've made a mistake yourself?
That's important too. You might say, I should have clarified that earlier, or I would recommend we adjust our approach.
These modals really help take the edge off difficult conversations.
They really do, and that's the art of professional communication. You can be honest and direct while still being kind and respectful.
That's such valuable advice. Let's look at some more specific email examples. Let's look at some real professional email examples. Can you walk us through a few scenarios?
Absolutely. Let's start with a request for help from a colleague.
Okay, I'm listening.
Here's a simple request email. Hi, Sarah. I hope you're doing well. I'm working on the quarterly report and was wondering if you could share the sales figures from last month. Would it be possible to get them by Wednesday? Thank you so much for your help.
That's a great example. It uses was wondering, could, and would all in one email.
Yes, and notice how it's structured. First, a friendly greeting, then the request with polite modals, then a specific timeline, and finally, a thank you.
What about a more formal request to a senior manager?
Good question. Something like, Dear Mr. Johnson, I hope this email finds you well. I would like to request a meeting to discuss the proposed marketing strategy. Would Thursday afternoon work for your schedule? Please let me know if there is a more convenient time. Thank you for your consideration.
This is more formal. What makes it different?
The language is more formal. I would like. I hope this email finds you well. For your consideration. Also, the structure is more structured and formal.
Now, let's try an example giving advice or recommendations.
Sure. Here's one. Hi, team. I've reviewed the project proposal and have some thoughts. I think we should consider extending the timeline by 2 weeks. This would give us more time for testing and quality assurance. Could we discuss this in our next meeting? I believe this approach would help us deliver a better product.
This uses I think we should, would give, and could we discuss, really good modals for professional suggestions.
Exactly. And it presents the suggestion constructively, explaining the reasoning behind it.
What about a soft disagreement or giving feedback?
Here's an example. Thank you for sharing your analysis. I appreciate your hard work on this. However, I would suggest looking at the data from a different angle. Perhaps we could include customer feedback in the report? I think this would provide a more complete picture. What do you think?
That's a really diplomatic way to disagree while still being constructive.
Yes, using I would suggest, perhaps, and what do you think makes it collaborative rather than confrontational.
What about when we need to say no or deliver bad news?
That's always challenging. Here's an example. Thank you for your request. I've considered it carefully, and I'm afraid it wouldn't be possible to approve the budget increase at this time. However, I would recommend discussing alternative solutions in our next meeting. Could we schedule a time to explore other options together?
This is so well phrased. It says no clearly, but offers a constructive path forward.
Yes, the key is to be honest but helpful. You want to maintain the relationship while being clear about the situation.
These examples are gold for our listeners. Let's now talk about some common mistakes and how to fix them. Let's talk about common mistakes learners make with these modals. What have you seen?
Oh, there are quite a few common mistakes. Let me walk through the main ones.
Please do.
First mistake, using would when you should use could or vice versa. While both can be used for requests, the context matters. If you're asking for permission, could is more natural. If you're making a more formal request, would is better.
Good point. What's another common mistake?
Second mistake, forgetting to use modals entirely and being too direct. Like I mentioned earlier, send me the file sounds demanding compared to could you send me the file?
What about overusing these modals?
Yes, that's another mistake. Using would, could, and should in every sentence makes your email sound unnatural and overly formal.
I can imagine that would sound quite strange.
Definitely. The key is to use them appropriately, not excessively.
What about confusion between should and would?
That's a common one. Remember, should is for advice and recommendations, while would is for polite requests and hypothetical situations.
Let me ask about another mistake, using modals incorrectly in negative sentences.
Good point. A common mistake is saying, I wouldn't mind not working on weekends when you mean something else. Or, you shouldn't worry when you're trying to reassure someone. The placement of not matters.
Can you clarify that?
Sure, you shouldn't worry means it's not a good idea to worry, advice. But if you want to reassure someone, you'd say, there's no need to worry, or you don't need to worry.
That's a subtle but important distinction.
Yes. Another mistake is using should for obligations when you should use must or have to. Remember, should is for recommendations, must is for requirements.
What about the word order? Is there a common mistake there?
Yes, In questions, the word order changes. You might hear people say, "Could you send me the file?" which is correct, but sometimes learners forget and say, "Could you to send me the file?" which is wrong.
Oh, that's important.
Yes, after modal verbs like could, would, and should, you use the base form of the verb without to.
These are such valuable corrections. Let's summarize the key points before we move on.
Great idea. Let's review the main differences.
First, would and could are used for polite requests, while should is for advice and recommendations.
Second, use these modals appropriately, not too much, not too little.
Third, pay attention to word order and negative forms.
And fourth, consider your relationship with the person and choose the appropriate level of formality.
These are wonderful tips. Our listeners will definitely benefit from this. Now let's dive into our vocabulary breakdown. We've selected key phrases that will help you sound more professional in your emails.
Yes, let's go through these one by one. I'll start with some of the most important phrases.
Sounds good.
First phrase, I would like to. This is a polite way to express what you want. Example, I would like to schedule a meeting for next week.
Another one, would you mind? This is a very polite way to make a request. Example, would you mind reviewing this document?
Next, could you please? This combines could with please for extra politeness. Example, could you please send me the updated report?
Here's a good one. I was wondering if this is a soft, indirect way to make a request. Example, I was wondering if you could help me with this project.
Would it be possible to? This is formal and polite. Example, would it be possible to reschedule our meeting?
Next, I think we should. This is for making suggestions. Example, I think we should discuss this in more detail.
You should consider. This gives advice. Example, you should consider getting a second opinion.
Perhaps we could try a different approach. This is a tentative suggestion. Example, perhaps we could try a different approach.
I would recommend. This is a formal recommendation. Example, I would recommend waiting until next quarter.
Would you be able to? Another polite request form. Example, would you be able to attend the workshop?
If you could, that would be great. This adds appreciation to your request. Example, if you could send me the data by Friday, that would be great.
I should mention. This introduces important information. Example, I should mention that the deadline is approaching.
We should probably. This is a gentle recommendation. Example, we should probably get started on this soon.
Could I ask you to? This is a polite way to introduce a request. Example, could I ask you to clarify your previous email?
I would appreciate it if you. This is very formal and polite. Example, I would appreciate it if you could respond by tomorrow.
You might want to. This gives gentle advice. Example, you might want to review the guidelines before proceeding.
Should you have any questions? This is a formal closing phrase. Example, should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me.
These phrases are gold for professional communication.
Now it's time for our reflection questions. Think about how you can apply what we've learned today.
Here are some questions for you to consider.
First question. Think about your last few work emails. Did you use polite modals like would and could? If not, how could you rewrite them?
Second question. When you need to give advice to a colleague, how do you currently phrase it? Could you use should more effectively?
Third question. Have you ever received an email that sounded too direct or even rude? How did it make you feel? How can you avoid doing the same?
Fourth question. When saying no to a request, how do you soften your response? What phrases could you use?
Fifth question. Think about your relationship with the person you're emailing. Does it affect how formal you should be with your language?
Fair enough. Sixth question. Can you think of a situation where you need to give difficult feedback? How could you use these modals to make it more constructive?
Seventh question. How often do you overthink your email language? Is there a balance you need to find?
Eighth question. Practice time. Write 3 sample emails using the phrases we learned today. 1 requesting help, 1 giving advice, and 1 softening a disagreement.
These questions will help you reflect and practice. Remember, learning takes time and practice.
That's all for today, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
We hope you learned a lot about using would, could, and should in professional emails.
Remember, these modal verbs are your secret weapons for polite, effective communication.
And keep practicing, and you'll sound like a professional in no time.
Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time.
Bye for now, English learners.
Take care.
Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. Click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.